Well, good morning, everybody. It is May 5th, 2020, and I was driving this morning to do my morning devotional. I do a Tuesday morning devotional on Facebook Live at 7 a.m., and I was thinking through all the things that I was going to say there, and I realized that today was May 5th, and today is, so the date is 5/5/20, and the number 5 is the number for grace, and so I really felt compelled to change my devotional and do it on grace. And so I got up early, I ran through Starbucks, got me a little Starbucks right here. And hey, you know what? Starbucks is not an official sponsor of this, but man, if they want to, all right. Anyways, so I was thinking about grace, and I just got really encouraged, and I came down here to the church property. So I work at Declaration Church plant down in Spring, Texas, and we are a mobile church right now, but we just bought this property. So let me see if I can kind of show you a little bit. There's the frontage. Everything you see with trees is our property, and it goes way back there. That's just where it turns a corner, but it's actually 86 acres. And 86 acres is a lot of land. And the church had the opportunity to buy it for a steal. I mean, just amazing favor. The seller was amazing. He had 3 offers on the table. The church's offer, honestly, was the lowest by far. And he wanted the church to have it. He wanted the church to be a part of this community. So he worked everything that he could to make sure that we got the property. And it was just like when Israel was leaving Egypt and God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Not the seller, but the circumstances surrounding the closing just got harder and harder, and they went longer than expected. And so the seller said, you know what, if you guys will close by this time, gave us a date, I'll throw in an additional 27 acres. So the church owns 113 acres that they got for a steal I'm part of the church. It all started before I got here. We got, for the price of what we were paying for 86, we got 113 acres. And the price we paid for 86 is so far less than what any land around here is worth. It's just amazing. As people say, favor ain't fair, right? And that's really good. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I came down here because, to me right now, this land is a perfect picture of God's grace. So it says in Ephesians that we are saved by grace through faith. And grace is the undeserved, unmerited, unearned favor of God. So there's nothing you can do to get it. He gives it freely. And it says that we're saved by grace through faith. And in 1 Corinthians 13, it says that God gives faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love, right? That's what it says. But it says he gives faith. So not only does he give freely grace, but we're saved by grace through faith. We access God's grace through faith, and God gives us the faith that we need to access his grace. I don't know of a stronger way for God to say, there's nothing you can do to get my favor. I'm going to give it freely. All you have to do is step into it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything to get it. I'm going to give it just just step into it. Step into it and walk. Walk as though it's been yours forever. Because we're made new, right? When we step into God's grace, we are new creations, made new. All things are made new through Christ. And so we just step into it. And, it says in Romans, Paul writes about grace and talks about how grace overcomes everything. Where sin abounds, grace abounds more. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I've had conversations where, people have messed up, they've sinned, and their mentality is, well, it's all covered by grace. Okay, God's favor, he gives it freely, Scripture says if we sin, then we have an advocate. Jesus goes to the Father on behalf of us. And, just because we sin does not remove us out of God's favor. I totally get that. I will point out it says if we sin, we have an advocate, not when we sin. But the mentality, I want to talk about the mentality that says, well, it's all covered by grace. That mentality is a twisted mentality. It's twisted either by the enemy of God or by our fleshly minds, both of which are opposing to God. And Jude addresses this, okay? Jude addresses this, and I wanted to read that. Bear with me here. I'm just out here by my truck, so I'm doing the best I can. In Jude, verse 3, Dear friends, although I was eager to write you about the salvation we share, I found it necessary to write, appealing to you to contend for the faith that was delivered to the saints once for all. For some people who were designated for this judgment long ago have come in by stealth. They are ungodly. Ungodly is what it says right here. Turning the grace of our God into sensuality and denying Jesus Christ, our only Master and Lord. And so Jude's saying there that there are going to be people in the last days that are going to come into the church, and they're going to turn God's grace into the ability to do whatever you want and live any way that you want and try to pervert the gospel. But here's the misapplication. In looking at God's grace that way, it's really taking the place of God's mercy. God's mercy is we don't get what we do deserve. But God's grace, while it is unearned, undeserved, unmerited, right? We can't do anything to get it. The purpose of God's grace is it empowers us to live the overcoming lifestyle. Ephesians says we're saved by grace through faith unto good works. If we say we're living by grace, but we're not living unto good works, meaning God's grace is not leading us into good works, it's not God's grace. It's some other false grace. It's not truth. God's grace leads us to good works. It empowers us. God's grace empowers us to live the overcoming lifestyle. Listen, the life that God has called us to live, it's impossible. It literally is impossible in the flesh. And we know it's impossible because He sent Jesus to do it for us. And if it wasn't impossible, Jesus's life on earth and His trip onto the cross and His becoming sin and His being forsaken by the Father would have all been wasted if it wasn't impossible. But it is impossible. But all things are possible with God. And in Christ, we can do all things. See how all this works together? It really is all about Christ. It really is all about God's grace. It really is all about His goodness. I just wanted to encourage you this morning that there really is nothing that we can do to earn God's grace. But in God's grace, we can overcome everything. We are called to be the overcoming generation. Let's step into being who we're called to be, the overcoming generation. And listen, I'm not just talking about sin, although sin is huge. We must overcome sin. But I'm talking about overcoming the things of this world and being the light of the world, just as Jesus was. Listen, Jesus is the light of the world, so I'm not trying to take His place. But He lives in us. It is no longer I that lives, but Christ that lives in me. We are called to be the light in the world right now. Absolutely 100%. The last few days, I've really been overcome with videos and TV shows, documentaries about people who in the world have accomplished amazing things. Athletes, businessmen, people who have stepped in and accomplished amazing things. Things that really only they accomplished. And they had gifts. They were given gifts. They were gifted. By God, they were given these gifts to do things well. But here's the underlying theme of all of them. They all stepped into that gifting. They all altered their lives to make way to refine the gifts that they were given. To allow, now some of them, maybe many of them, were not saved. But we would say in the church, step into your gifting so that God can refine that gift and make it the most, make it everything that He has wanted it to be in you. And He put that in you before the creation of the earth. It is time for His body to step into our gifts and our callings. And that means we have to alter our lifestyle. And I've been really convicted with that the last few days, because I know I've been living my life in contentment. I've been contented. I've been contented with my life. Just thinking, well, I think this is it. I'm doing great. I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing better than most. I'm doing better than most, so I must be doing pretty good. And one of the things that I've been watching is the thing on Michael Jordan. And he went to North Carolina and played. And he went to the coach and said, I want to be the greatest player that's ever played at North Carolina. And the coach said, well, then you're going to have to work. You're going to have to work harder. And Michael said, well, I'm working harder than anybody here is already working. And the coach said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said you wanted to be the greatest player to have ever played at North Carolina. And Michael said, you're right. So we can't compare ourselves. We have to go to the Lord and say, okay, what do I need to do? And then we step into that. And there's so many more stories that I've been hearing lately where people have altered their life to step into what God has called them to step into. Listen, we can't earn it. We don't deserve it. But God's saying, I have a life for you, and it is a life that is amazing. It's far greater than you could ever dare to imagine, hope, or even ask for. But you've got to be willing to make the choice to step into it. And we step into it by faith that He already gives us. So good. I'm so encouraged. I hope you're encouraged. I hope this has put you in a place of being encouraged for the life that God has called us to live. It's time in the kingdom that we run. We run this race, and we run with a sense of urgency like we never have before. It is time. Let's do this thing. We can do it. God's good. Life is good. Man. All right. Hope you're doing well. We'll talk to you soon.